All right, Mopar people, welcome back to the channel. I'm just Mopar Joe. So I had an idea for this video. I just dynoed about 3 weeks ago the 440 from my buddy Nick's 69 RT SE Charger. So I figured I took it to Kuntz & Company. I also took my 400, which is going in the blue truck now, currently, also to Kuntz and had it dynoed. So I thought in this video I could compare those two for you, give you a little sense of what each engine was about and how they compared. I've got their dyno graph stacked so you can see that, and I show their dyno numbers together. So let me go ahead and post up both of their build specs for you, and I'll explain how they were a little bit different during the tests. Also, it's worth noting, if you haven't seen both those dyno video sets, go back and check them out. But with the 400, I was actually able to test 3 different intakes. So I had the Performer RPM, the single plane Holley Street Dominator that had been professionally ported inside. I did not port it, I'm not a professional. And then lastly was my dual quad tunnel ram, wind tunnel ram that I port matched, and also ported the inside of the tunnel ram so that the runners had good alignment. So I was able to test all 3 of those on that engine. And I mentioned before, my dyno mistake was running the majority of my tests through a 2.5 inch by 18 inch glass pack. And the dyno operator asked me what was wrong with me. I thought I needed those because it had a bung in it for the O2. He didn't have a bung that day. So it was basically a waste. At the end of the day, after we did all of our other tuning, I'm using that run in this video to compare to the best run with the 440. So the 440, here we get into our differences. The 440 had the brand new dyno headers that they had made from Schoenfield, I believe. They were 1 7/8 stepped up to 2 inch. So you know that the majority of people believe that does increase torque, or at least change the curves. I only had an 1 7/8 set of, I think, old hookers with no collector on them at all on the 400 at the end of the day. Or if you want to keep that in mind, that's something to think about. A lot of people also believe that a 16 to 18 inch extension on a header would also give you a little more power or torque, however you want to look at it. So the 400 did not have that extension. It was just an open collector, 3-bolt flange sticking into the exhaust pipes of the dyno room. So that's one major difference. The other one, it's slight. It might make a difference. It might make a wash from the other point. This engine had an electric water pump on it, and the dyno 440 actually had to run its own water pump throughout the whole tests. I'm not sure how much that water pump matters. It was not a water pump and alternator or anything else. It was just running the water pump. So there's a difference there. Other differences, major differences between the engines, I would say, the dyno, the 400, which is actually a 406, it's bored 30 over, so 405 point whatever, rounded up to 406. The static compression on this engine ended up being 10.0 to 1, just barely 10 to 1. The dyno 440, we had planned differently, bought better pistons. It had forged pistons. These are hyperutetics. I believe it was 10.7 to 1, so 7/10 more of a point of compression. I've always heard that 1 full point of compression could mean 3 to 4% more horsepower. But if we look at, this was a 406, the other engine, I believe it was a 40 over 440, so I'm going to call that a 448. So at the end of the day, we had 42 cubic inch difference between the 2 engines. So keep that in your mind. I believe the 400 was still batting pretty nicely for what it was. Another slight difference. Some people may say it makes a difference, some may not. So at the end of the test, or the first graph I show you, that was with the Street Dominator. So it was a single plane intake versus the 440 had a single plane Torquer 2 intake. to fit under the guy's flat Charger hood. But this engine actually uses solid roller lifters on the hydraulic roller cam. Okay, so that's all the roller set up. I'm putting a softer ramp. I'm using that in conjunction with the solid roller lifter, where a solid lift cam has a tighter lobe and it has to ramp up faster. That would be the major difference. I think on Engine Masters, they claimed that was 7 to 10 horsepower. I don't know. We had a good set of Gatorman hydraulic lifters for the Dyno 440, so kind of let that be your judge. A lot of people also equate that to you have a higher RPM potential with a solid roller, where a hydraulic roller might end up, it may give up at 6,500 or something. I think these were rated to 6,500. But we didn't have to turn either engine to 6,500. They have very mild cams in them. Their cam specs were almost identical. One was a comp, the other was a Urson. And Urson custom ground that cam for the Charger, for the compression, for everything. And Rodney Bird picked my cam out for me out of his garage. So thanks, Rod. After saying all that, let me show you chart number 1. So both engines peaked around the same on torque and horsepower. The 406 peak was, I think, 535 on torque and 534 on horsepower, somewhere in there. Or no, it was 541 foot-pounds of torque and 534 or 535 horse, somewhere in there. The Dyno 440 or 448, whatever you want to call it, we made I'd say a lot better numbers. That was 578 and 565, I believe. So, or maybe it was 581 and 565, something like that. So you can see the drastic difference in the graph. You know, more displacement is usually a good thing. It's kind of hard to beat displacement. Now, I can't argue and say that one is better than the other for anything. The majority of the time, I think the 440 would probably be better. An instance where this 400 might be better, if you needed an engine that could rev faster, this is such a short stroke. I had this engine in my purple car, and I think I got it down to 690, 697 or 95 at 100 miles an hour or 101, something like that. So, and that was with the 410 gear. So maybe it could have gone faster with a 456. That's all bench racing, whatever. But other differences in the two engines. Right now, this engine's got 440 source stealth heads on it. At the time, it had 75 cc chambered E Street heads that Ed had done some work to at Ed's machine. So that was on the 406. The Dyno 440 or 448 had Trick Flow 240s that were CNC ported and checked out by Ed. So a lot of people out there would agree, and you don't have to, but the majority of people out there agree that the Trick Flow 240 is a nicer head, the nicer combustion chamber, nicer port setup. Everything is nicer about them than the Edelbrocks, except they cost about $1,000 more or $1,200 more. So just weigh your options there. The last chart I wanted to show you was I put all the tests from the 406 versus the maxed out test of the 440. And the majority of, well, both engines had a 750 AED carburetor. The 448 had a modified version that had the choke tower shaved, where mine had the actual rolled Venturis that looked a little nicer. That might actually pick up a little power. Some people agree with that. I went ahead and did a average for both these engines, just so you can see. The 406 was doing pretty well. That's 1.32 horsepower per cubic inch. And our 440 was still strong at 1.26 per cubic inch. So they both were really impressive engines, especially for, you know, being built at home by me, you know. Let me know in the comments what you think. I had to throw this one in for fun because there was a guy that got upset because I said that this 448 was better than the 392 Hemi. And he told me that the 392 Hemi would pull a camper up a hill way better than whatever. Anyway, I found this information from Engine Labs. They did an excellent test on a Gen 3 392. There we go. So they got a 392 out of a Scat Pack, which is not anything you would ever find from the factory as like the big gas engines. Their tune's totally different, but what they did here, they got their 392 Hemi from a wrecking yard, and that was from Greg Acosta. He did that article. They hooked it to the Edelbrock Pro Flow 4 Plus on 9/9 of 23. So that was a Scat Pack engine with long tube headers, and they ended up making 498 horsepower and 526 foot-pounds, which my little 400, I did beat them on horsepower, and on my foot-pounds, I was just a tenth underneath them for the average of the cubic inches. So womp womp. But this is old iron here that you can build at your house and stick a carburetor on. Also, I got to say, that's pretty good torque and stuff for the old short runner single plane manifold. I think with my Performer RPM, I could have done a little bit better if it was ported correctly and all that. But yeah, I just wanted to show those specs. I'm waiting on Greg to get back to me on whether or not I can use that chart. I'd like to show it to you as well, just for a little information out there. But Gen 3 Hemi swap stuff, or good old big block Mopar. And did I tell you that I've weighed this engine before, and it was, I believe, 12 pounds less than a iron-headed 360. I got a video on that somewhere out there. Anyway, I've probably stirred the pot enough for the day. Let me know in the comments if you'd rather have the 406, the 448, or the good old 392. That's a Gen 3. I appreciate y'all watching, and I will catch you next time. All right, Mopar people.